Good morning. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Scott Goldberg, the president of RightGift. Good morning, Scott.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. So can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Yeah. So I've basically been working in technology companies of various sizes and types for the last 20 years or so. So started my first company when I was in college. I've worked for very large companies, and now back to working for kind of a smaller startup for the last couple of years. So always focused on technology companies, and what I'm doing now is kind of taking all of that technology experience and applying it to the philanthropy space, the charitable giving space.
Oh, very nice. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as a remote employee and an employer?
Yeah, so RightGift is a remote first company. We're a remote only company, and we have been since day one. I have personally been working remotely for the past 6 years or so. Prior to that, I was very much not working remotely. So I have now, 6 years of experience doing it, and then 2 years of experience kind of running a company that does it and does it as our only way of doing things. So it's been nice as far as what's happening over the last month to have a company that already had all the tools and infrastructure in place to be remote first. But, really it wasn't necessarily out of any strategic decision as much as the fact that my partner Kyle and I have worked together for a while now, and we enjoy working together. And he lives in Texas and I live in Utah, and we just, that was really it. But as we kind of started to grow the company and define what it was that who we wanted to be and what we wanted to do, the idea of A, not relocating ourselves to be closer to each other, and B, finding great people all over the country or all over the world was just made a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been working remotely for over 10 years, and
yeah.
I shudder to think of dealing with the San Francisco traffic again when it reappears.
Yeah, time. Yeah, that's so prior to 6 years ago, I worked at the NFL, I worked at Fox, I've worked at big companies where, roughly being in the office at a certain time every day was the expectation, and roughly leaving at the same time was the expectation. And those hours happen to coincide with traffic. I was living in LA at the time, and take a long time to get where you're going. So, the amount of hours that you lose as a result of that was always eye-opening to me. And having all that time back, once you get that time back, it's pretty amazing. Spend it. Yeah.
And it's hard to go back to losing that time.
Very hard. Very, very hard. I would agree.
Especially LA. I mean, LA is one of the few cities that has worse traffic than us here in San Francisco.
Yeah. And some people within LA have it worse than others. I mean, you hear about just nightmare commutes. I was fortunate not to have one that bad, but even to me, when you're driving 30 to 45 minutes both ways, that adds up, when you put the hours, when you add those hours up, it's pretty mind blowing.
Yeah, it is. So what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think needs to be done differently to make it more effective?
Yeah. I mean, I am one of those people that, like you said, you've been doing it for 10 years. I believe that it absolutely is the future of work. And, what's interesting, and like, I was thinking about this last night before our session here today, that for people who are going remote for the first time right now, I would imagine this is not a great experience for those people, because one, it was very jarring. Like 6 weeks ago, they weren't planning on this, and then they got thrown into it. And I know I'm experiencing this myself, where my kids are home, they don't have school, there's no social outlets, there's no camps to throw them into. And so managing your home office and running a daycare / school, I think for a lot of people is probably not a great look at what remote work is all about. So I'm a little, I hope that people don't look at remote work as a bad experience out of this whole thing we're going through, because I don't think it's reflective of the reality of remote work. That being said, prior to all of this happening, when things were more normal, I fully believe that remote work it's just conducive to running a company and
Mhm.
your job. And I live in Park City, Utah. There's a little story that people know about here where Bill Clinton came to Park City in the late 90s. And he was at a diner. This is like a quote he had in our local newspaper. And he said to the owner of the diner, isn't it amazing to think how maybe like 20 years from now, so 2018, he was picturing that you could live in a town like Park City and work for a company based halfway around the world. And at the time, that probably sounded like he was predicting, flying cars or something like that.
Mhm.
But I'm definitely one of the people doing that. And I know a lot of people here doing that. I think it allows people to live where they want to live in places they want to live, not be tied to proximity to an office. And I think more important than all of that, we have the tools at our disposal as a society to
Mhm.
facilitate conversations like the one you and I are having, to communicate with your team members and just get work done.
Yeah, it's interesting because I agree. It probably did seem strange at the time, but I've actually interviewed people that have companies that literally have employees based on multiple continents, and,
Correct.
and they think nothing of it. It's just like that's just normal to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, we have, so at RightGift, we have someone in Maine, we have somebody in Colorado, I'm in Utah, my partner's in Texas, we have another engineer in Texas, we've had an engineer in New Orleans, we've been all over the country, for sure, and it's, it's completely natural.
And it opens up the talent pool to you too.
That's it, 100%,
Yeah.
100%.
So, now that you've talked about RightGift, why don't you tell us the story behind RightGift and what's the journey been like?
Yeah, so RightGift is a free registry platform for charitable giving. We basically make free tools for the nonprofit industry. And the way we're able to do it for free is we rely on affiliate revenue. So the retailers that facilitate the transactions between donors and recipients pay RightGift a commission. So it's been our vision to create free tools for the nonprofit industry, free software tools, since the beginning. And it's just not a space. We all come from technology backgrounds and outside of philanthropy and not the nonprofit world, that's not really in our backgrounds. But we wanted to take our skills and apply it to social good. So that was really the inspiration for it. The journey as far as being a remote company, like I said, we've been remote from day one. And you're the point you just brought up right before asking the question is exactly the point for us. We have been able to find great talent all over the country, and when you kind of release yourself from geography and just say, who am I looking for? What's the candidate I'm looking for? What's the makeup of the type of person we're looking for? Then you don't care where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, we've, I think, built a stronger team because we've just been able to find people all over the place.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So there are companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products for startups.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already touched on this. I mean, what do you think is going to be the future of that? Because companies like yourself need to hire really quality. I think the key is quality people.
Yeah.
And usually, in a hurry, you don't want to go through all the whole hiring process.
Yeah. Yeah. So to me, I think the key is, I'll step back and answer that question in a roundabout way. So to me, effective remote work requires focus, more than anywhere else, more than any other way of working. If you're unfocused as a remote company, as a remote worker, I think it's really hard to do your job. At the same time, I think remote work facilitates focus. I think it does a better job of facilitating focus. My experience in non-remote work is, and I think, I've been seeing this in interacting with customers and partners over the last several weeks, that people do seem to have more time. There's fewer meetings. There's fewer just distractions throughout the day, because as a remote company, you don't have time to fill up your calendar with a bunch of internal meetings. And we as a company we have one daily phone call. We communicate throughout the day. We use Slack. We use all the traditional communication channels, but we have one absolute daily kind of stand-up call with each other. And it's a very tight format. It's, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? What are your roadblocks? Just the traditional stand-up stuff. And that keeps us really tightly aligned around, what are you doing? What's he doing? What's she doing? Everybody knows what the others are doing. it keeps you accountable, and it keeps you really, really focused. Where that leads into talent acquisition is I think you have to have that same level of focus. You have to know, who are we hiring? Why are we hiring them? What's the profile of this person? And then we can then communicate that to somebody like yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The more specific and focused we can be, I think that makes your job easier. And then as a result, we can do what, we can acquire talent more efficiently.
Yeah. And you can concentrate on running your business and growing.
Correct. That's
yeah.
it.
And I've noticed too, that I think I've always said it to people. It's what remote work does. It forces you to get your ducks in a row.
That's right.
Right. Because you think about it, when you see someone every day, you know what they're doing.
That's right.
But if someone's somewhere else, you imagine like, oh my God, they're going to be sitting there doing nothing for 8 hours. I've got to get my act together.
Correct. Yeah, you're right. And that's where I say, I think it makes you more accountable. I mean, one of the things that you hear people complain about with remote work is that you're always connected. The idea of kind of a start and stop to your day goes away. And one, I don't think that's totally true. I think I've worked in traditional, in-office companies where that feels to be that's life at the NFL for sure, is it's 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's, like you said, it's really about it's about focus. What are you working on? What are you trying to accomplish? Are we aligned on that? And if we are,
Mm-hmm.
I always say to people on our team, I don't care if you do it at 1 a.m. or in the afternoon, or if you're moving toward your goals, if we're progressing as a company toward the goals we've set up, that's all we can really ask for, right?
And I think it's part of the culture. Like, I know the companies I've worked for, I basically said, look, at 5 o'clock, I go to my gym.
Right.
Because I'm home all day. I need to get out. And they understand that.
That's right.
And it helped that I'm on the West Coast and they were in Central Time Zone, which is even later for them. But
totally.
And they would tell me the same thing about them. Hey, I have to pick up my kid every day at 5 o'clock my time. And I know.
Yeah.
And over time, you get into a rhythm.
You get into a cadence. Absolutely. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And I think it actually makes people more productive because they appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For me, kind of going back to your original question, my journey. I mean, like I said, from the time I was, 22 until 6 years ago, I was working the way most people work, just going to an office every day. And I remember it kind of dawned on me in one of the previous jobs I had that, I'd go through my morning routine, which had to start at the same time every morning, regardless of how you felt. You had to go through your morning routine, and then you had to get in the car and drive to work. And, the expectation, like I said, was it was really more important to be there at a certain time than it wasn't about necessarily what you were doing. It was about like being there.
Yeah.
And I remember, just human nature. There's days where that feels great and that works. And there's days where that doesn't. And, there was days where I would go and I'd be in my office at a certain time and just kind of feel like unproductive for a couple hours, as I'm, trying to be productive, read emails, read newsletters or whatever, but just not really productive. And then, like you said, I would, get up from my desk and maybe go outside or like just remove myself from a computer screen. And all of a sudden, it's like clarity happened, all of a sudden, all these ideas and thoughts and things I was supposed to do would just gel. And I would get very focused, and I realized that, man, that there's something to that. I don't know what it is, but there's something to that. And I think that is what remote work can help facilitate, is more of a flexibility around, what does your mind need today? Yes, there's what you're trying to accomplish, but you also need to mentally be prepared to attack that work, and trying to do that on a 9 to 5 schedule every day it's tough.
It's almost meditative, if you know what I mean. It
absolutely
gives you that pause and just like, okay, now I'm ready. Boom, let's go.
Right. That's right. So yeah, and you hit on this perfectly. I think that there's probably been a philosophy of, if you give too much flexibility to your team, that they'll become less responsible versus more responsible. And my experience has been that human nature is that, you know, we want to achieve, we want to do well, we want to feel successful in our lives. And actually, when you give people the room to do that, I think, especially if you hired well, and that's what, you know, you guys talk to, if you hired well, then you're going to have people that step up to that versus, you know, take advantage of it.
Yeah. And it also ties in what you said earlier, you know, clear objectives, talk every day.
That's right.
Right. And then it just flows. And if I have to go do something at 10 a.m. that day, I can do it. And I feel more appreciated because I have that freedom.
Correct. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Scott, this has been really fascinating. I love the way you approach this. I wish RightGift much success. And I want to thank you for your time today.
All right. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.